Good evening and welcome to the Way Out Show. I'm your host, Dane McCarthy, broadcasting to you from FEMA Region 5, deep in the bowels of the United Police State of America. Today is July 24th, 2015, and we have a very special show for you tonight, and I'm going to call this the President Trump Show. And yes, it sounds outlandish, it sounds impossible, but the polls are indicating that people are really going in a big way for Donald Trump. Now, we've got to remember that there's a long time between now and the election. It'll be in 2016. So we have over a year. A lot can happen in 1 year. But right now, Donald Trump is riding high, and he's giving the other candidates a really a big run for their money. And why? It's because, one of the reasons is because Donald Trump is a very unique personality, and he comes off as a regular guy, and you sense that he doesn't play the games that the regular politicians do. He isn't very careful about how he speaks. He just speaks his mind. But he's also extremely clever and funny and entertaining. And we almost could use someone who we feel, there's a gut feeling, a visceral feeling about him that he just feels like he's not lying. That the person you're seeing when he does an interview is the real Donald Trump, and not somebody who's been created as a false face by handlers and people behind the scenes, that he runs the show himself. And we've seen, and we know from his own personal life that he does run the show, and he's been a very, very successful businessman in the United States, and he doesn't pretend to be anything other than a very successful businessman. And he tells people that I'm very rich, and he tells them that a lot, and he tells them that he's successful, and well, he is in those terms. And he doesn't, interestingly, he doesn't seem to have scandals constantly and criminal investigations constantly following him like Hillary Clinton has her entire career in politics. From back in the 80s, even before she was in politics, there were criminal investigations about her and people wondering about her. And you can say where there's smoke, there's fire. Well, I think it's true. The latest thing is a criminal investigation being proposed for Hillary Clinton's email scandals, where she used a private email against the rules, then turned over her email, and then magically a bunch of those emails were gone. As you know, a lot of people are finding out, emails are not so private as they thought. But anyway, if the politicians, if the big political machine in Washington decides that Trump is enough of a threat, right now he's not a threat, apparently, they will really go after him in a very serious way, and something big will happen. Now, whether he can, I think it's a foregone conclusion that no matter how popular Trump is, he will not be the presidential candidate for the Republican Party. He could go for a third party, and he has threatened to do this. And this scares the GOP. They can't control someone who's not a Republican or a Democrat. The big machine isn't set up to control a third party grassroots. So we'll see how that goes. But it's all very fun. So I've got a bunch of interviews and clips I want to show. I'll comment on each one, and we'll end up with a little clip of Hillary Clinton and her fun camp idea. Okay, let's roll the first clip.
First, the pundits scoffed at the notion that Donald Trump would run for president.
He is obviously never going to be the Republican nominee for president, and he is obviously never going to be a candidate for president.
Not quite so obvious. Then the commentators scoffed at his chances in the 2016 race, but so far the billionaire has stunned some of the self-styled experts. I sat down with him at his Trump Tower office in New York. Donald Trump, welcome.
Thank you.
Now that you're in second place in the polls, Politico runs a story quoting Republicans, including Ari Fleischer, the former Bush White House spokesman, calls you roadside accident. He tarnishes everyone, irresponsible, divisive, hurtful. Does that hurt your feelings?
No, I mean, Ari is somebody that nobody respects, and nobody has any respect for him. I'm surprised you even waste your time quoting him. I'm number 2. I'm doing well. I'm going up. And people take me very seriously, and they call me, and they want to meet with me and at the top level of the Republican Party. And frankly, I'm the one that's going to bring back health to the country. I'm going to make America great again. Politicians aren't going to do that. And everybody takes me very seriously.
You are constantly denouncing some journalists who write about you and talk about you. Let me run through it. ABC's Martha Raddatz, unprofessional and biased, you say. NBC's Chuck Todd, a real loser. National Review's Jonah Goldberg, dumb as a rock. Columnist George Will, a total dope. Fox's Charles Krauthammer, a totally overrated clown. I don't think you really believe that. I think that they criticize you, and your instinct, you're like a boxer, is to punch back.
Well, I do punch back. I believe in punching back, but, you know, those are people that I didn't think have treated me fairly. A while ago, they said, he's never going to run, he's never going to run. Then I ran. Then he said, oh, he'll never file his papers. Then I filed my papers. Now they don't know what to say. And then all of a sudden, I get these really big poll numbers, and they're really good, although I think they're going to go higher, because I really think people agree with what I'm saying at the border and just agree with me, period. So
is there a payoff for you in
higher.
picking fights with the not-so-popular media?
No, it's not a payoff. Look, I like people that treat me well. I don't have to be treated perfectly, and I just want to be treated fairly. They were unfair. They don't call me. They don't mention anything. Martha Raddatz was acting like, oh, this must be a mistake. It must be a mistake. You know, I built a massive company. I've had #1 bestsellers. I've had The Art of the Deal, which is just about the biggest business book of all time. I had tremendous success on television with The Apprentice. I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and I was a really good student, and it's one of the hardest schools in the world to get into. And then they treat it like, you know, like, why is he here?
Speaking of The Apprentice, NBC this week announcing it's severing its relationship with you over your comments on Mexican immigrants. First of all, when you hit back at NBC, why did you drag Brian Williams into it?
Well, I think that, you know, they protect Brian Williams, and he went around lying and telling things that weren't so, and I think probably he shouldn't be on, but, you know, that's up to him. I actually think he shouldn't have done it, to be honest. I think he should have gone someplace else, but it was just something that I thought was appropriate. You know, you could bring up other names, too. With
Does
NBC.
it tarnish you a bit that this network that you partnered with so successfully over the years now says, you know, it's preserving its dignity by not wanting to do business with you anymore?
Well, they were very unhappy because we had a great season last season with The Apprentice. They had, I think, a 2.4 rating. It was reported we did very, very well. And they were very unhappy when I ran, because when you run, you're not allowed to, as you know, do a show.
Right, of course not.
So they were not happy with me, I will tell you that. And then when they saw the last week or two, the poll numbers so strong, you know, they figured, well, I'd run, I'd get out fast, and still do the show. When they saw my poll numbers, one of them actually called me and said, wow, you're not getting out anytime soon, are you? And, you know, they renewed The Apprentice.
Right.
This was renewed. And they thought I'd do it. And I can't do that. I want to make the country great again. I can't do that if I'm doing The Apprentice. So they were not thrilled with me.
On the Mexican comments, why not say, maybe I went too far, poor choice of words, or even, I'm sorry?
I don't have to say that. Look, the Mexican border is a sieve. People are pouring through our country, into our country. We don't know who they are, where they are. They come from all over the world, not Mexican. I employ thousands of Mexicans. I've employed over the years many thousands of Mexicans.
Right.
I love the Mexican people. They're fantastic, and everybody knows that. But in terms of the border, it's a disgrace. Either we have a border or we don't have a country. You know, you can't have a country without borders. And people are coming in, and some of those people, and I read it even yesterday, there was a huge article about the tremendous crime that's taking place. It's like a crime wave. It's one of the most dangerous places on earth. And I bring that up, all of a sudden I'm a bad person.
Bill Maher says you're a Frankenstein monster who never apologizes for every crazy thing you might say.
Well, he also said I'm here to stay, and which was actually interesting. So I brought up the fact that Mexico is killing us on trade, and I mean killing us.
But you use
Ford
words
is
like
open.
rapists.
Well, rapists are coming in. Excuse me, I'll show you an article done
not
by
disputing it.
Fusion.
It's a question of
Of course
tone.
you're not disputing. So if you're not disputing it, why wouldn't I say
Because it's
it?
a question of your tone, and it offended a lot of people.
Excuse me, I read an article yesterday from Fusion, which is owned by Univision,
Right.
as I'm told, and it talked about many of the women that cross the border are being raped. Many of them, a tremendous percentage. They actually said 80%. That's hard to believe it could be 80%. But they said the women coming across the border are raped. This is done by Fusion. It was printed in the Huffington Post, no friend of mine.
Right.
And I use the word rape, and all of a sudden everyone goes crazy. It's at 80% of the women, which is hard to believe, to be honest with you, but there is tremendous. So
I think by
I
and
can never
large-
apologize, Howard.
Yeah.
I can never apologize for the truth. I don't mind apologizing for things, but I can't apologize for the truth. I said tremendous crime is coming across. Everybody knows that's true, and it's happening all the time.
I
so
think
when
over
I
the
mention
years-
crime, all of a sudden I'm a racist. I'm not a racist. I don't have a racist bone in my body.
I think over the years, the press has been pretty good to you as you've built this reputation as a worldwide deal maker and builder and TV star. I wonder, though, if you're used to the extra kind of intense scrutiny that comes with being a presidential candidate.
I think I am. I
Yeah.
mean, I've been out here for a long time doing this.
What about when people start writing stories about your business background and say, and I know you say you've used the law to reduce your corporate debt, say, well, Trump's casino unit declared bankruptcy several times.
So let me just tell you about that. I made a fortune in Atlantic City. I did fantastically. I left about 7 years ago. And I used the laws just like Leon Black, just like Carl Icahn, just like Henry Kravis, just like Warren Buffett, just like everyone else. But when I use the laws, you're talking about the bankruptcy laws, I use them to my advantage. I'll buy a deal, throw it into bankruptcy immediately, negotiate a great deal, you know, with the banks and everything else. And you know, when other people do it, they don't mention it. When I do it, they say, oh, he used the bankruptcy laws. So I used the laws. I did a great job. I did a great job. I made a fortune in Atlantic City, but I left, and actually the financial media gave me great credit for timing, because I left Atlantic City 7 years ago.
Well, that's our first clip, and what I like about him is that he's able to handle anything that is thrown at him amazingly well by just admitting, if the interviewer is right in making an accusation, admitting that he's right. Bill Clinton used to do this type of thing very well, and he was able to dance around issues that would have sunk just about anyone else in the political arena for quite a long time, until finally, you know, they got him. They lowered the boom on him. I'm not that I'm saying that I'm a fan of Bill Clinton. I'm not. I liked him. I used to like him. He was funny also and clever, and you can see that Donald Trump has a mind that operates very quick, and there's this subtlety that appears to be goofy, but the guy is not goofy at all, not even close to being goofy. He's really, really bright, and he's probably brighter than most other people in the political arena. And he has a likability, and I think maybe it's time for Americans to be liked again. I mean, you like him. You can't help it. You may think he's a clown, but I'd much rather have a clown as president, not that I'm saying he is, than a criminal or something like that, you know, or someone that you cannot trust a word that they say, because it's everything is there's a sinister quality about it. So let's move on to the next one, the next clip.
Let's talk polls. First of all, Washington Post poll on Monday, great news for you. A huge lead in the Republican field. Quinnipiac poll came out today, though. Not so good news for you. In the general election voters, Colorado, Iowa, Virginia, you have the worst favorability ratings of anyone, Republican or Democrat. Negative favorability ratings of them was 2-1. Hillary Clinton also did badly. What do you think?
I haven't seen it. I really don't know. I haven't seen it.
Do negative favorability ratings worry you?
I don't think so. I mean, I've turned a lot of them around. And as you know, in North Carolina, it was negative, and now it's like tremendously positive. And when people hear what I say about the vets and how strong my commitment is to the vets, they've been treated so badly, and to the border, which is just horrible. I mean, every time people listen to me, all of a sudden it becomes very favorable. A good example would be North Carolina, where it's so positive. I haven't seen that, but I think generally speaking, we're doing very well, and certainly we're doing well in the ABC Washington Post poll and every other poll that I've seen in the last couple of weeks.
So you think you can turn around, because a lot of people say, look, that those kind of unfavorability ratings, that does not bode well. You think you can turn that around?
I don't know. I mean, who knows? I'm doing this for the good of the country. Somebody has to do it. Politicians are never going to turn this country around. Our country's a mess. The politicians are going to destroy this country. They're weak and they're ineffective, and they're controlled by the lobbyists and the special interests. So, well, I have no idea.
You talk about the lobbyists and the special interests, though. You and I talked last time. You've given a lot of money to politicians over the years. You give to Democrats, you give to Republicans. Aren't you part of the problem?
I would, absolutely, 100%.
You are.
Absolutely. I was on the other side. They will do whatever I want up until you decide to run.
So
they
isn't
will
that
do
hypocritical to say, oh, this is a problem, but I'm going to make the most of this problem?
It's called playing the game. I was a businessman. I made a fortune. I made a lot of money. I posted over $10 billion.
So in order to make money, it's okay to play the game?
Well, it's called your life. I mean, I'm a businessman, and I contribute to people, and they treat me nicely and everything else. And
so how do you change that? How do you change that culture of
I understand
money
the
for
culture.
access?
Look, I just read an article where Bush is meeting with all these lobbyists in Washington, has a meeting with all these lobbyists. Every one of those lobbyists that gives money, they expect something for it. And that's a bad thing.
Don't
that's
you
a
have
bad
lobbyists,
thing.
though?
Absolutely. I've had lobbyists, and I've had some very good ones. They could do anything. They can take a politician and have them jump off this ledge.
Can you actually change that culture of corruption?
Well, you can, in the sense that the top person can't be bought. I'm worth far too much money. I don't need anybody's money. I'm not running with anybody's money. I'm spending my own money. But the lobbyists they totally control these politicians. Just take a look. In one of the articles, very recently, I see Bush with the lobbyists, and he's sitting there with all of these people. They're totally telling him what to do, like a little puppet. And the same with Hillary, and the same with everybody else. Now, when I'm in business, I'm part of that game. When I'm in this, I now know. When somebody
Can you jump back and forth, though? I mean, can you really be a guy who says,
I
look,
am
this,
able to do that
that's
very
not
easily.
hypocritical?
Not at all. Look, I've made a lot of money. A lot.
I've heard.
And I don't need money. And I don't need money to run. I don't need $5,000 here, $10,000. These guys are desperate for money. I don't need it. I'm going to do what's right for the country.
Who'd run your business if you're president?
My children and executives. I have very good executives and great children. They're very good.
Talking yesterday, Jeb Bush said, if we embrace this language of divisiveness and ugliness, we'll never win.
Well, when you say divisive, okay?
No, he said.
No, but you're quoting him.
Yeah.
So when you quote divisive,
Right.
I mean, I get called all these horrible names by Lindsey Graham, who I don't even know. I didn't start it with Lindsey Graham. I couldn't care less about Lindsey Graham. He's registered at, I think, 0 in the poll. By Rick Perry from Texas, who was up in my office a few years ago. I just posted a picture of him shaking my hand, looking for money and looking for support. And he was up, people say, I call it hypocrite. But they're saying horrible things like, I don't even know these people, and they're saying these. Now, am I supposed to, just say, oh, it's okay for them to say, one guy, I guess it was Lindsey Graham, called me a jackass. So am I supposed to say, oh, it's okay if I'm called a jackass? I'm called a jackass. You have to fight back. The country has to fight back. Everyone's pushing our country around. We can't allow that, Anderson.
Is it presidential, though?
I think it's presidential
to give
to
out
fight
somebody's
back.
phone, to give out a personal phone number of an
Well,
opponent.
that was a long story. I mean, you have to see the whole story, the way it morphed, okay? That was a whole story where he wanted to get on Fox and Friends, and he called me up out of the blue. I never met the guy. Then he wanted to come in for campaign contributions. He gave me his and then he starts hitting me years later, and I happened to have this crazy phone number, and I held it up. I said, this guy was over here, and actually, as you probably know, the room was packed. It was standing room only. In fact, they had other theaters. There was overflow crowds. They had all sorts of closed-circuit television into other rooms. The place went wild. We all had a good time.
But is that presidential?
I think so. I
Is
think
that
it's
something
fine.
as president, when you're opposed by somebody in Congress, you would give out their personal phone number?
I was hit by somebody unfairly. I was called names by somebody. So he was up, there's somebody that's hitting me saying what a bad guy I am, was up in my office asking for money and asking if I can get him on television.
If you're president of the United States, you're going to be hit by half the country. Is probably
true,
not going to like you.
That's true.
Are you going to call them dumb, stupid?
No, I think it's a little bit different. Right now, I'm trying to do something to make the country great again.
As
Politicians will never make this country great again. Now,
as president, you would change your tone.
Oh, I think so. I think I'd deal very differently.
Do you have the temperament to be president? That's the question that Jeb Bush was really raising about the divisiveness, about the language. I mean, you have a no prisoners approach. Somebody attacks you.
No, I don't have that. I'm very different than you would think. Right now, I'm fighting because I'm number one in the polls by far, and I'm being attacked on all sides. When you're attacked, you have to, in my opinion,
you're going to be attacked all the time.
Excuse me. In my opinion, yeah, but this isn't the same thing. In my opinion, when attacked, you have to, defend and attack back, okay? I'm being attacked by certain people. Actually, Bush, I think he's probably a nice guy. I don't think he has the temperament. And by that, he is a nice guy, but he doesn't have the temperament. You know why? He's too low-key. He's too laid back. Can you imagine Bush negotiating with China? You want to talk about temperament, I'll introduce you to the Chinese. They have temperament. But can you imagine Bush negotiating trade deals with China?
His brother, George W. Bush, when he was running, said that he would be a uniter, not a divider. What would you be?
I think I'd be a great uniter. We're not united now. We have a president that, whether people love him or hate him, the world is a mess. Hillary Clinton, by the way, was the worst Secretary of State in the history of this country, in my opinion. But we have a president right now, doesn't get along with Russia, doesn't get along with anybody. I mean, the only one he gets along with is Iran, and even that's sort of very suspect because they want to blow everybody up.
Back in 2007, 2008, I saw a quote on Wolf Blitzer. You said to him that Hillary Clinton surrounds herself with smart people, and she'd probably be a good negotiator against Iran.
Maybe she could be, but I don't think so. I know her very well. And again, when I'm in the private sector and I'm a businessman, I like everybody because I have to deal with these people. I'm not going to go and attack people. I have to deal with these people.
So Donald Trump as president would be a different Donald Trump than we've seen on the campaign trail.
Take a look at the world today. Who do we get along with? We get along with almost nobody. Our allies are decimated. We did a stupid thing in Iraq by going in, and you know that in 2004, I was totally against going in. If you look, July of 2004, Reuters, probably stuff before that. But July of 2004, Bush actually sent a group to talk to me because I was getting a lot of publicity on the fact that we shouldn't be doing Iraq. I am the most militaristic person, but you have to know when to use the military. I said, you will decimate this country and you'll create an imbalance in the Middle East like you've never seen before. That's what's happened. And I said, Iran will take over Iraq and the second largest oil reserves in the world. And I also said, and other groups will take over that'll be worse than Saddam Hussein. You know what happened, Anderson? It's ISIS. They took over the oil.
Have you ever publicly acknowledged making a mistake?
Well, look, everyone makes mistakes. Do I publicly acknowledge making a mistake?
Have you ever said, you know what, I made a mistake? Sorry about that.
Yes, I mean, I don't think about it. I don't like to make too many mistakes.
Okay, so that's the first part of the interview with Anderson Cooper. And you can already see how Trump trumps Anderson Cooper at every turn. Anderson Cooper is constantly trying to trip him up, trying to set a trap that he'll fall into, trying to embarrass him, trying to make him look bad. And he just wiggles out. But it's simply because he acknowledges, like you asked him about lobbyists, and he said, I could make the lobbyists they run the show in Washington, but I don't need them because I make a lot of money. I have so much money, I don't need them. And so he's amazingly entertaining, and it really does have some interesting ideas against the invasion of Iraq. That's crucial. For me, anybody who was against that, I look at them seriously because a lot of people wouldn't have the guts to actually acknowledge that the United States was wrong to invade Iraq. I mean, publicly, a politician. I mean, I don't think Hillary Clinton would say that because she voted for the invasion of Iraq, not against it. And so I think if it were between Hillary Clinton and from what it looks like here, between Hillary Clinton and Trump, I think Trump would be probably more cautious about sending the U.S. military in to invade. For one thing, you get the feeling from Trump that he's not hooked in to this agenda, this globalist agenda, that he doesn't care about that he's big enough and rich enough and powerful enough and his own man and unique enough to just say, why do we need to do that? You know, how is that going to help America? You know, most people who are running the show today are just waiting to drop the hammer on the United States because they don't even like democracy. They're not even for the capitalist system. They want to see America destroyed and submerged into this globalist unified world with them at the very top. So let's go on to the next clip, the rest of the interviews, a little bit more. It's in 3 parts.
I want to ask you about faith, because you talked about this on Saturday at this Faith and Values Forum, and I think a lot of people haven't heard you talk about it and were really interested.
Okay, fine.
In Iowa.
And by the way, I was very well received. I had the biggest standing ovation, and it was really a great day. It was really a great day.
And a lot of people didn't focus on it because they got caught up in the whole McCain thing. You said at the Faith Forum, when asked if you've ever asked forgiveness from God, you said, I'm not sure I have. I just go on and try to do a better job from there. I don't think so. And that surprised some people
Well, I don't
of
think
faith.
so. You know, and then I said communion. I go to communion, and that's asking forgiveness. You know, in my
For you,
opinion,
that's what
well,
communion
it's a
is.
form of asking for forgiveness. Yes, communion. And I go to church a lot.
But
and
you-
I'm Protestant. I'm Presbyterian.
But the idea of asking for forgiveness, that's not a central. Is that a central tenet for you? Is that something
Well,
that just?
I like to work where I don't really have to ask for. I like to do the right thing where I don't have to actually ask for forgiveness. Does that make sense to you? You know, where you don't make such bad things that you don't have to ask for forgiveness. I mean, I try and lead a life where I don't have to ask God for forgiveness. But I'm Protestant. I'm Presbyterian, which a lot of people are surprised to hear. I go to church. The great Norman Vincent Peale was my minister for years. The Power of Positive Thinking was fantastic. And
So for forgiveness, that notion of forgiveness, that's not a central.
well, I
tenet
try
for
not
you.
to make mistakes where I have to ask for forgiveness, for one thing. So when I'm asked a question like that, it's like, you know, I don't like to make a lot of mistakes.
So, and I would never ask the detail, but the idea of repentance, is that something that's important to you?
I think repenting is terrific. I
But
mean,
is
it's
that? But
great.
do you feel the need to?
If I
that-
make a
to me, that's
mistake,
part of
if
forgiveness.
I make a mistake, yeah, I think it's great. But I try not to make mistakes. I mean, why do I have to, you know, repent? Why do I have to ask for forgiveness if you're not making mistakes? I work hard. I'm an honorable person. I have thousands of people that work for me. I've employed tens of thousands of people over the years.
You give millions to charity.
I built the Vietnam Memorial in Lower Manhattan
Let
with a
me-
small group of people.
At the Faith Forum, you talked about communion, the Eucharist, the Lord's Supper, different faiths call
Right.
it different things. You said that you drink my little wine and have my little cracker.
We were having fun. The room laughed. We
No, I'm
were
just
all
saying,
together.
but some people of faith there
They didn't.
said
Look,
that they
didn't say that at all.
Well-
when I left, I saw people. I got the biggest ovation of the weekend. I saw people, and I saw how a couple of reporters made a big deal out of that. We were having fun when I said, I drink the wine, I eat the cracker. But we're
Eric?
talking about communion. And you know what? The whole room was laughing. And they're religious people, and they're great people. They're great people. But the whole room was laughing.
Eric Erickson of Red State said, based on your comments about faith on Saturday, that it's, quote, largely closed the books on evangelical support. Do you
I don't
believe
think so, because I just saw polls in Iowa that I'm doing really well. I mean, you know, in terms of Iowa, where it's a very big group of people, I'm doing really
that? Although
well.
the Quinnipiac poll in Iowa among general voters.
I don't know. You keep bringing up negative. You only want to talk about negative. Why don't you bring up the positive
Well,
polls?
I did.
I mean, you start off. Excuse me.
I started off with
you
the
start
Washington
off with
Post
the
poll.
interview.
No, I started off with the Washington
I don't-
Post poll.
You start off the interview with a poll that I didn't even know existed.
I started off with the Washington Post
Okay,
poll
yeah.
intentionally because I knew
Sure,
you would
sure,
accuse me
sure,
of that.
Sure. All I know is every poll I'm leading in, and you give me these two polls where it's different states.
All
They're
right.
not even a national
We'll check
poll.
the record. I started
Oh,
off
I'm
with
sure
the
the
Washington Post poll
fine.
where you are way out in front.
I think it's very unfair. You're talking about a poll I never even saw. It's not
No,
even
it's
a
today.
poll.
It's a
not even a
poll. Okay.
It's on 3 different states, and you're hitting me with this.
Okay.
And I think frankly, I think it's a very fair question.
Okay.
I think it's an extremely. You start off the interview with that. You don't say, I've led in the Fox poll. I'm leading in the ABC Washington Post poll.
You're leading across the board.
Well, you did. I am leading across the board.
Right.
And then you hit me with this poll that I didn't even see before, where, oh, gee, it's not even that kind of a poll. All I know is I have a very big group of support. And I think one of the reasons is that,
you're way
let
out
me
in
tell you,
front.
the people don't trust you, and the people don't trust the media.
Right.
And I understand
And
why.
politicians.
You know, I've always been covered fairly accurately because it was usually a financial press. And, you know, numbers are numbers, okay? And my numbers happen to be great. So I was always sort of treated like fair. With the media, it's, in not all cases, some of the political media is great and really honest. Even if they don't want to be, they're really honest. But I find that 60-70% of the political media is really, really dishonest. And, you know, I tell the story, the American dream. I talk about the American dream in speeches. The American dream is dead, but I'm going to make it bigger and better and stronger than ever before. The American dream is dead, but I'm going to make it bigger and better, stronger than ever, right? And I go, boom, and I do it with great bravado, and the audience goes crazy. I come home, and my wife is saying, oh, darling, that was so bad. I said, what was bad? What you said today? I said, what did I say? The American dream is dead. Cut. On one of the major networks.
When you're on that debate stage, one of the things I think they're going to hit you with, your opponents are going to hit you with, not the media, the opponents,
Go ahead.
they're going to say, you have flip-flopped. You're a decisive
Sure.
guy in business, but you've been an independent, you've been unaffiliated, you've been a Democrat, you've been a Republican, back and forth. What's up with that?
Well,
Aren't
you
you
know
a
who else
flip-flopper?
flip-flopped? A man named, my favorite, Ronald Reagan. He was a Democrat. He became a Republican.
But
He
you were also
flip-flopped.
unaffiliated, you were independent.
By the way, I was, and I also live in New York,
You were
which is
pro-choice, now you're
excuse me,
not.
well, if you look at that clip, I hate the concept of abortion, and I did it. But also, it was never. I'm a businessman. They're talking to me as a businessman about, you know, things like abortion. Nobody ever even asked me questions like that. But if you look at that clip and let it run, I talk about how I hate the concept. How I went on forever about it. But nobody would ask me questions. You know, it's sort of like a question you don't ask. I build buildings. They're not asking me about, am I pro-choice? Am I pro-life? What am I? But, yeah, when I don't use the word flip, I've evolved on a lot of different things.
The difference I have found between you and just about every other political candidate I've ever talked to is you don't come with a huge retinue, which surprises a lot of people. You talk extemporaneously. Your critics say you don't know the issues enough, but you talk.
I know the issues better than anybody
But you talk
knows the issues.
extemporaneously. Politicians are very controlled, and I think that's a huge part of your appeal. And I think it's why people enjoy their personal interaction with you. Even right now, we've gone way over the amount of time you said you wanted. Nobody has given me a signal saying wrap it up. He's got to go. So I think that's all to your credit and deserves to be pointed out.
Look, you ask me a question, I give you an answer. It's very simple. I'm a very smart person. You know, I went to the best school. I'm a very smart person, right? Let me just say. So you ask me a question, I give you an answer. I don't need pollsters like Bush and all these other people. They don't answer a question. Hillary, she can't give you an answer without going back and checking it out. I'm much richer than almost anybody. I can have thousands of pollsters. I don't have any. I don't want to waste the money.
Sandra Bland is a woman, African-American woman, who was pulled over in Texas.
I saw that.
I'm
It
not
was
going to ask you
terrible.
specifics because I can't be expected to look at everything. But pulled over for allegedly changing signals. Dash cam videos now have been released. A lot of African-Americans, a lot of people are very upset about that. To African-Americans in this country, and there's a lot of people who believe that they are treated differently by police. Do you believe that there's a problem with that? Do you
I hope not, but I will tell you, I saw that clip on your show, by the way. I thought it was terrible. I thought he was so aggressive. It was a traffic signal, as I understand it. And, you know, who gets out of a car for a traffic signal? I haven't been pulled over in a while, actually. But seriously, he just looked very aggressive. I didn't like his demeanor. I thought it was terrible, to be honest with you. And I'm a huge fan of the police. I think the police have to be given back power. But this guy was overly aggressive, terribly aggressive.
Do you think that happens to African Americans more than it does to you or I?
I hope it doesn't, but it might. And, you know, I have a great relationship with African Americans, as you possibly have heard. I just have great respect for them, and I, you know, they like me, I like them. The answer is it possibly does, it shouldn't. And it's very sad if the case is. I will say, though, in this case, I watched that so closely. I watched it a few times. He was terrible.
End of the second part of the interview with Anderson Cooper, and you can see how Anderson Cooper is trying to make Trump trip. And he used, in the second part of the interview, the face card. And he said, what do you think about forgiveness? What do you think about repentance? And you can clearly see how Anderson Cooper is trying to manipulate Trump into saying something like, well, making some kind of statement about forgiveness, that I need forgiveness. And then, of course, this could be taken out of context, put on the news. Trump asks for forgiveness, or Trump has repented, or is planning to repent, or will ask for forgiveness, or something like that. But he did not fall. He saw through the ploy, and he didn't fall for it. And he wasn't going to give Anderson Cooper the pleasure of getting that soundbite that could be used against him. And it's very clear when you really are seeing the kind of agenda that is behind. There's a powerful forces behind Anderson Cooper, and they want certain things, whether it's for political reasons or financial reasons, for themselves or for their backers. The major multinational corporations that own CNN, I forget what the name of the corporation that owns it, but they're all essentially one entity now. There are 5 or 6 different corporations that own all the media, and they have a very similar agenda. So let's move on to the third part of this very interesting and pretty funny and good, entertaining interview.
You're heading to the border tomorrow. You've made trips to the border in the past. You've been invited by a group of representing Border Patrol officers. You keep saying Mexico is sending these people across.
Right. Mexico is sending. You said it properly. You said it properly. Thank you.
But you've offered no proof. And that's what people say about that.
Well, you may have proof very soon.
Proof.
You may have proof very soon. All you have to do is speak to some of the border people. Some of the border people told me, well, we're going to see a lot of border people
We
tomorrow.
talked to immigration officials who said, look, they've never heard of that. There's no evidence of that. Wouldn't somebody, of all the people who have been arrested, you're telling me there wouldn't be proof by now?
Do you remember many years ago, Fidel Castro, when he emptied the prisons and sent everybody into the United States, right? Very famous, right? This is a much more sophisticated version of the same thing. Mexico doesn't want to house these people.
But there was clear evidence of that
this animal that killed Kate, he came across 5 times. 5 times. Now, maybe he came across because he thought the weather was nice. Maybe he was pushed across by Mexico officials. Look, Mexico's leaders are much smarter and sharper and more cunning than our leaders. They're doing things that we don't even know about. Let's see what happens. I'm going to speak to a lot of people tomorrow. There are a lot of people very excited that I'm going to the border tomorrow. I may never see you again, but these are minor details.
You're telling me that one illegal immigrant wouldn't have a slip of paper or something that would indicate that he was sent?
Well, we're going to find out. We're going to say. I think it's common sense. Mexico doesn't want to house somebody for 30 years in a prison when the United States will do it.
But you keep saying everybody knows this is the case.
I think so, yeah.
Being sent.
I think a lot of people know.
But there's no
I think the
evidence
smart people know. I think the streetwise people know.
And
I think border guards know. Well, you're going to find out if I have evidence. I'm not telling you now, but you're going to find out what I have. Obama, I never thought he was qualified to be president. But the one thing I thought he'd be good at is being a cheerleader for the country. Actually, he's very divisive. I really hit them hard over the last 2 days on the flags. Why aren't you for the 5 Marines that we killed? Finally, he lowered the flags. And I don't want to take credit for it, but I hit him hard. You saw that. Why doesn't he call up Kate, the parents of Kate? Why? Kate is this incredible young woman who was killed by an illegal immigrant. He calls other people. They send staffs of White House people to these other funerals. They never called the parents or Brad, the brother of Kate. Why? Why can't he put in one phone call to the parents or to the brother of Kate?
Well, it's my job to push back, as you know, on these kind of things. You didn't lower your flags until the same day that the White House chose to.
Mine were lowered the day before yesterday.
Tuesday. Same day as the White House.
Well, whatever. They were lowered.
Same day as
Again,
Obama.
I'm not the United States.
You
okay?
also...
You would think that would be
I
automatic.
talked to Brad, the brother of Kate, who said that you did not call, though you had been talking about his
Excuse
sister,
me.
and wished you had.
I spoke to him numerous times. I spoke to him last night. He's a great guy.
Right. Subsequently, you have called, but he's... But
Excuse me.
this was a
I
week
had to
ago.
leave a period of grieving. I'm Donald Trump. I'm a private person.
You didn't want to
have to
call.
have. Of course, I don't want to call the day of the
Fair enough.
murder, which is exactly by this animal that came in illegally 5 times. So I wanted to wait, and I explained that to Brad. I said, Brad, I have to tell you something. I actually saw what you said. I said, I had to leave a period of grieving. I couldn't
enough.
call you. The president could call immediately.
Right.
The president could have called that day, the next day, or the next day. I'm a private citizen.
That's the kind of thing, as president, you feel you would do a much better... You would be
I would have called.
much less divisive, much more of you. That's how you would be a uniter.
I would have called, absolutely. That would be a call that you should make. You know what? It's quick. Those people are devastated. They're great people. And there are others. I had a news conference that you people covered, that CNN covered, in California
remember.
with some of the most incredible
covered it
people
live.
where their sons and daughters and family were killed by illegal immigrants that shouldn't have been in the country. And yes, I would call those people. I can always find time to call. One thing about me, I wouldn't be on planes doing all these fundraisers. If you're going to have fundraisers, maybe you do them someplace else. I mean, the other night in New York was shut down because Obama's here to go to a Broadway play. He's here to, you know, when you're in the White House for a limited period of time, I'd be there all the time, working.
The difference...
I wouldn't even have time to comb my hair the way I comb it. I'd probably just have to comb it back.
You have talked a lot since Saturday about John McCain, the war hero thing. You did attack John McCain's record on veterans issues, and you talked about
He's been terrible for the veterans. John McCain I supported him for president.
Do you follow specific policy issues?
Excuse me. I raised a lot of money for John McCain. I supported him for president. He's been horrible to the veterans. And here's what I say. I'm all over the place. I go to all over, whether it's New Hampshire or Iowa or California last week. I'm all over. I meet so many veterans. These are some beautiful people. They're strong. They see me, they have tears pouring down their face. They're treated so badly by the Veterans Administration, which is corrupt
No doubt about
and
it.
incompetent.
Yeah, and we've done tons of reporting on this, but every veterans group I've talked to has said what you said about his record on vets is just wrong. CEO of Concerned Veterans of America says it was patently false, ill-informed, says McCain, quote, has taken the lead for
He's
years
been terrible
in
for the
trying to give
veterans.
veterans real
Excuse
help.
me. For trying. That's the word, trying.
So let me give you
okay,
specifics.
Excuse me. He's trying. He's not getting the job done.
Let me give you specifics.
Because they're living in hell. They're living like third-class citizens. The hospitals are falling apart. The new hospitals are costing 4 or 5 times what they were supposed to cost, and they're not working.
So let me, because you don't talk specifics, let me give you some specifics
I do
here.
talk specifics.
Major legislation passed last year by John McCain
Right.
on this.
And
The
you know what it's done? The
Veterans
waiting
access-
list, excuse me, the waiting lists as of yesterday were longer than they've ever been in the history of the VA.
Veterans Access to Care Through Choice Accountability Transparency Act. Are you aware of what that did?
Excuse me, yes. And can I tell you what? The waiting list, as of yesterday it was reported, is the longest for veterans. I see them. They wait 4, 5, 6
But you're
days to
saying
see a
he's-
doctor. Excuse me. And then a doctor says, I'm sorry, I can't see you, I'm going on vacation.
But you say he's done nothing. He has
I
done
don't say
things.
nothing. I say he's been very ineffective with respect to helping veterans. I see probably, I'll bet you I see, in what I've been doing over the last couple of months, more veterans than he sees, all right?
People
They
say
are
that-
devastated.
Your critics say you're not actually following policy issues. Are you aware of what that major legislation did last year?
Well, I think one thing it did is it took the burden off Obama's back, because that was blowing up like crazy around Obama for the horrible job he's done also, and other politicians. And by passing that legislation, and now you have the longest waits in history, but by passing that legislation, it took the burden off. People haven't been fired. There's scandals all over the
But
place.
that act actually makes it easier to fire VA officials. That act gives $500 million. It
In the
builds
meantime, it
26
hasn't
new
been
hospitals.
used, and they haven't been fired, and the VA's in worse shape than it's ever been in. It's typical political stuff. And I will tell you, the one thing with that act that's really bad, it took the burden off Obama. He was getting decimated, and that was a good thing, because it showed the plight of the veterans.
Just this
Veterans
year-
are being decimated.
Just this year, McCain introduced the Clay Hunt Suicide Prevention Act for American vets. Are you aware of that? Have you been following that?
I know he's introduced things, but nothing happens with them. And frankly, even when they get passed, whether it's 2 years ago or this year, and you give me names, I can give you many names of people that absolutely don't like John McCain because they felt that he let the veterans down.
You've started a hotline for vets. John McCain's office says, look, we got 5 full-time caseworkers. In this year alone, they say they've dealt with 2,000 cases for vets.
I hope you're not trying to make the case that the veterans are being properly taken care of.
I'm not. We've done tons of reporting. Like no, I'm just saying you're attacking John McCain's record. I'm asking specific.
Probably the most corrupt group in this country is the Veterans Administration. Now, you could say corrupt or incompetent. It's both.
Okay, so that's all we've got, I guess, on that interview. Absolutely fascinating stuff. And Trump, doesn't have all the facts and figures maybe that Anderson Cooper wants from him, but he still manages to answer as directly and honestly as he can. And I think that's one of the things that's refreshing about him and why people are interested in him. Now we'll see, of course, whether or not he can survive in a very competitive field of other candidates. And we're almost certain to see, probably in the next few weeks, another candidate who comes up in the polls or gets a lot of media attention for whatever reason because of statements that he's made or actions that he's taken, and so we'll see what happens. Now, we know, of course, that classic American politics is like a media circus. The media loves it. The ratings go up. It's just, there's a certain crazy element to American politics that makes it kind of fun, and maybe that's really what's going on here. Only time will tell. So we have yet another clip, and let's see how this one goes and how Trump handles himself under pressure.
And we need the kind of camps that you all run. I mean, really, where, none of the serious stuff, none of the life challenge stuff, more fun. I think we have a huge fun deficit in America. And we need to figure out how to fill that fun deficit, certainly for our kids, but also for the rest of us. We've become, in so many ways, a country that has slowly but surely figured out how to get along with more people from more backgrounds. But there are still differences that we need to get over. I said the other day at an event that, we're much less racist, sexist, homophobic, all of those things. But we sure don't want to spend time with anybody who we disagree with politically. I mean, that is just too stressful. So, maybe mix it up a little bit. You can have the red cabin, the blue cabin, have to come together and actually listen to each other. Wouldn't that be a novel idea? And sort of create this, much more open dialogue opportunity, which I would like to see more of in our country.
Okay, well, sorry about that. That was the last clip we had of Donald Trump, and instead we have that final clip that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Hillary Clinton's fun camps. This is absolutely amazing. Now, she was talking apparently to a convention of camp counselors, and so there is a justification for talking about this. But what makes it interesting, but also kind of creepy, is, well, now the office of the president has accrued a very large number of powers that it didn't used to have, with the signing statements and executive orders, the ability to veto. Let's say that I did not know that the president had this power. I'm really questioning whether or not the president always had this power. Let's say that Congress refuses to pass a bill. Well, that bill can go to the president's office and he can veto the refusal. I've never heard this before, but it just happened. It was last week. And I thinking, veto the refusal. I didn't realize the president had that power. In other words, if Congress doesn't like something and refuses to pass it, the president can just pass it himself without the Congress. Now, I've heard it the other way, that a bill can pass Congress, both houses of Congress. It goes to the president's desk, and he exercises the veto. In other words, he goes against it. And then it has to go back to the Congress, and then they need, I think, a 2/3 majority to override that veto. But I didn't realize it worked the other way around as well. So this, and there's a lot of other ways that the office of the president in over 200 years since the founding of the nation has accrued an incredible amount of power. So Obama now has many of the powers that a dictator would have. And he claims, oh, I won't use them, but he actually has. And then, okay, let's assume that our next president is going to be Hillary Clinton. Well, Hillary Clinton has now proposed the fun camps. Let's have fun camps for adults. And when you think of camps and you put the idea of Hillary having the powers of a dictator together with the word camp, and you have to think of work camp, re-education camp, death camp, concentration camp, always that word camp. And you wonder, are these people going to be voluntarily in these fun camps to talk about the issues with people who have different political beliefs? Are they going to be forced there? Are they going to be taken there and put in these camps by judges as a kind of a timeout period or a prison sentence? What else will they be doing in these camps? Will they be given useful work during the day that they, like, building bridges or digging ditches or cleaning up along the highways, or just building extensions to the camp to make them bigger during the day, and then the cabins, the red cabins and the blue cabins, then they could talk about their political differences or how they could maybe be better citizens if everybody got together in the evening. How is that all going to work? So there's something very creepy about her, and especially when we look at the way Donald Trump comes off in an interview and when he speaks, and the way Hillary Clinton comes off. For one thing, Donald Trump seems to be actually way more eloquent. He doesn't say all the time, which is, I noticed, I've watched that a couple of times and I never noticed her saying you know. And that is a indication, that's a vocalized pause like that we would see typically in a speaker who is not particularly well trained as a speaker, because you have to learn over time to avoid those. Instead of vocalizing the pause, you just don't say anything during that pause while you're thinking for what you're going to say next. And I know that I probably used a lot of vocalized pauses myself, but I've learned over the years to try to minimize those as much as I can. You have to listen to what you're saying to try to avoid falling into that weak way of dealing with, okay, what am I going to say next? So it was interesting that Trump, now he didn't talk a lot about Hillary Clinton, but he did mention that she was one of the worst, or the worst, Secretary of States that we have seen in American history. That might be stretching it a bit, but it's possible, because after all, she did not actually finish out her term as Secretary of State. She quit. She couldn't handle it. Well, the media spun it that, well, she fell. She hurt herself. She fell. Well, she fell. Why did she fall? Because she was just clumsy, or was she exhausted? Was she at the end of her rope? Could she not go any further? Was there some other reason why she couldn't finish out her term of office and John Kerry had to take it over? And some people have been apologizing, or apologists about her. Well, you think, well, look, if she can't handle being Secretary of State, how is she going to handle being the President of the United States? And they're saying, oh, well, being Secretary of State, that's more stressful than being President of the United States. Oh, really? That would be a hard call for me to say that the President being the President is actually less stressful. We've seen how the presidents age in 4 years, in 8 years. They age. Franklin Delano Roosevelt didn't even survive until the end of his presidency. And admittedly, he, I believe, was on his third term, which is unheard of. They were so enamored of Roosevelt that they kept him on, and it was because, I guess, the war was going on. But he died, and his health was obviously bad anyway. But in every president, if you look at the photos, before picture and after picture, you can see that it takes a toll on the President of the United States, no matter who he is. And so is Hillary Clinton really even physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally up to being the president? But maybe that point is moot. It really doesn't even matter. Maybe the decision has already been made about who is going to be the president of the United States. And many people, of course, believe the shadow government, they select the president, and then they just manipulate the American people as much as they can to go in that direction. Or even better, they own both candidates, the major party candidates, both the Democrat and Republican. And if Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton run, they're virtually identical. It'll be the Bush family or the Clinton family. The Clinton family is really good friends with the Bush family. So we won't have much of a choice if that's the case. And it'll be just business as usual, and they'll just go right, the ship of state will just head right toward that iceberg the way it's been going until finally it hits the iceberg, and that'll be it. And America as we know it will be completely sunk. And then it'll be submerged in the globalist unified world that those people at the very top want. So that's all for today, and have a great evening and sleep well.